Before watching this video, if you haven't seen Phantasm for yourself, I highly encourage you to watch the movie for yourself before watching this. The movie is far too interesting and will take you on far too interesting of a ride to have it spoiled for you here, which it will be. I first watched Phantasm only about 6 months ago. When I first watched the film, I hated it, believing it had an incoherent story, nothing scary about it, and a stupid "it was just a dream" ending. However, there was one thing about the movie that I couldn't deny I loved from the start: the score. From the first seconds the score of the movie began to play in the movie, I was in awe. After the movie was over, despite my hate of the film, I found myself listening to the movie theme on loop for hours on end. As I listened to the music so much, I started to change my mind on the movie slightly. I ended up deciding to watch the movie again the very next day after watching it the first time. When I watched it the second time, I still didn't like the movie, but the strange incoherence of the story and the very unique way this movie scares you, which I wasn't used to, were things I found charming about it now. After the second viewing of the movie, I proceeded to loop the movie score even more on YouTube. I couldn't stop listening to it. As I pretty much listened to the score all day, every chance I got, I found myself thinking about the movie itself all day, every day. Through this persistent thought, I found myself really trying to find a reason to love this movie. I rarely hated horror movies like I did Phantasm. One day, as I was listening to the movie's score as usual, I looked down at my phone, which had the score playing on it, of course, and thus the poster of the movie was on the screen. I really stopped for a moment and read the movie's tagline, which is on the poster: "If this one doesn't scare you, you're already dead." For a while I read it over and over to myself and thought, what the fuck does that mean? After a while I came to realize the tagline is saying this movie is going to tap into the fear of death, and the only way death cannot scare you is if you were dead already. With this realization, I started to look at the movie in a way where I could figure out how this movie was trying to capture the fear of death itself in an abstract way. One of the greatest ways this film does this is through the lady in lavender. Even though the lady in lavender is only on screen for maybe 3 minutes in the movie, her character is one of great significance. She is an alternative appearance which the tall man can take on at will. The tall man takes this form on only before he's going to attempt to kill someone, often luring the victim with sex of some sort. Once the victim is killed with his knife, the true appearance of him becomes revealed. The lady in lavender represents how we often try to look at death as a beautiful part of life, but once it sneaks up on us, it reveals how horrific it really is. After I came up with this explanation for the lady in lavender, I started to study everything in the movie. Even in the middle of class at school, I would pull up scenes from the movie simply to study them and see if I could figure out what they meant. I was, for lack of a better word, obsessed with the movie. Even though what I was most interested in was the abstract representation of the fear of death in the movie, I grew a fondness for various other aspects of the movie as well. The film is riddled with scenes and subtext which never are given a proper explanation, something I initially hated about the movie but grew to appreciate. Mike and Jody, two of the main characters, are brothers which we are shown have a very complicated relationship. Jody, the older brother, cares deeply about Mike and is his caretaker, as both of their parents died about 2 years ago in the movie. At the same time, Jody is contemplating having Mike live with their aunt so he can move on with his life, but Mike clearly doesn't want Jody to leave him, and if he does leave, he wants to be taken with him. Mike follows Jody secretly throughout a lot of the movie because of his anxiety surrounding his brother's possible departure. When Mike and Jody are trying to figure out the strange tall man, oftentimes Jody forces Michael to stay home where he'll be safe while he goes to investigate the mortuary. Even though Jody is looking out for Mike, when Jody does this to Mike, we see how frustrated Mike gets. He hates being split up from his brother. This constant separation from Jody persists throughout the movie until the very end. At the end of the movie, right after Mike and Jody triumph over the tall man, Mike suddenly wakes up in his bed. At first, this does feel like a cheap "it was just a dream" ending, as I said at the beginning. Mike gets out of his bed to go sit down with Reggie, the friend of Mike and Jody's who helped them beat the tall man as well. Mike explains to Reggie what he dreamed about, admitting that it must have been a dream, but that it felt so real. Mike then says to Reggie,
First he took Mom and Dad, then he took Jody, now he's after me.
but Reggie reassures him.
Mike, that tall man of yours did not take Jody away. Jody died in a car wreck.
This brief conversation leads the viewer to think this dream Mike had was a manifestation of his failure to cope with the loss of his parents and his brother, and the tall man is simply a figment of his imagination, representing death itself, which took his family from him. Mike then goes back up to his room. When he first enters the room, he takes out a picture of Jody and looks at it. Afterwards, he walks further into his room when this happens. The tall man is revealed to exist in what is apparent reality as well. This ending is not only scary and unexpected, but it's mind-bending, leaving you to wonder if anything in the movie was real or not, if the tall man is still just a figment of his imagination, and the ending is a hallucination, if the ending is actually the dream and everything before it was the reality. That is the power of the final 15 seconds of the movie. It changes everything. This movie is not perfect. It's not even close. The movie can feel slow at times and has scenes that are very quirky and don't age well at all. Scenes that I would rather not even exist in this movie. However, those imperfections are what make this movie perfect to me. The movie was made on the budget of a McDonald's lunch, and it shows sometimes. But this is a movie that wanted to do something different. It wanted to create a unique experience for the viewer. The movie goes in so many wild directions that I did not even discuss here, that make the movie surprising constantly. It makes for one of the most interesting movies you will ever see, to where even people who don't like the movie can't deny they have not seen anything like it. In a movie generation where horror movies are built on jump scares and extreme violence most of the time, the modern audience, including myself, have trouble fearing older movies that were scary in a different way. Even hailed classics like John Carpenter's Halloween are seen as boring by younger audiences today because the film has a slow burn. Phantasm, like Halloween, terrified audiences at the time of its release. However, it scared people in a very different way than Halloween. Phantasm scared you simply by showing you imagery that your brain couldn't process properly. Imagery that is unnerving to look at. The dimensional portal to the Mars-like planet, the flying silver spear that drills into your brain, and the corpses emerging from the ground next to Mike's bed while the tall man stands over him. These things are scary because they are hard to understand. These shots are what contribute to the constant blur of the line between dream and reality that Phantasm thrives on. I want to discuss the sequels briefly, as I don't think they should go unaddressed here. I actually enjoy almost every sequel to Phantasm. They are all very wild and unique in their own way, making them very fun movies to watch, even though they get ridiculous oftentimes. With that said, I don't think Phantasm should have ever gotten any sequels. Phantasm 2 is definitely my favorite sequel, but it immediately ruins what makes the ending of the original so great, and it kills the mysteriousness of the tall man in the first movie as a whole. Don Coscarelli, the director, never wanted to make a sequel, and it's clear why. It ruined what made the original so great. I do enjoy the sequels, but I look at the original as a standalone movie. Phantasm has grown very quickly on me to become my favorite movie of all time, if not then at least my top 5. It is a movie that is going to put some people off because of how strange it is. In fact, it was off-putting to me at first as well. I understand that I perhaps give this movie too much credit, as I might still hate this movie if it weren't for the movie's score. However, the score led me to love so many other aspects of the movie that I don't think my perspective is completely biased. I also understand that I perhaps read too deeply into this movie, and that's the only reason I like it. but I have never had a movie that was interesting enough to make me want to read this much into it, and that alone makes this movie admirable in my eyes. This is only the baseline of my thoughts on this movie. I have so much more I could say, but we'd be here forever. I'll probably make follow-up videos discussing elements of the film in more detail. Even just reading through the script of this video, I noticed there's a lot more that I want to talk about that I don't have here, and I really want to at some point. But I am happy to finally be getting this baseline thought out. Thank you for watching. I hope I provided a new perspective to you on Phantasm if you don't like the movie, and if you do like the movie, I hope I helped you like it even more. It is a fantastic movie. It is a misunderstood masterpiece. I love it. I think it has the greatest score of any horror movie ever made. I can't get enough of it. It's a blast, and I think it's a criminally underrated film.